Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at the official first Tampa Bay Buccaneers depth chart that has been released. If you guys are new here, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button if you do enjoy these videos, and leave your thoughts about the Buccaneers depth chart down in the comment section down below. I have some notes here on my other monitor. That's right, we've got two monitors now. We're upgrading the system here on the channel. And I'm just going to, basically talk about what I wrote down as interesting observations. Starting off with the first one, which is the wide receiver room, which I'm not sure if I am reading this depth chart right. You guys will have to help me down in the comment section down below. But here's how I'm reading it. It's kind of in like a snake pattern, right? So I read it as Mike Evans at the 1, snakes down to Chris Godwin at the 2, then it snakes over to Antonio Brown at the 3, Scotty Miller at the 4, Jaydon Mickens at 5, Tyler Johnson at 6, Jalen Darden at 7, etc. That'd be Cyril Grayson at 8, and then it just goes back and forth. I don't know. But if that is the case, which I feel kind of confident that might be the right way to read this, Jaydon Mickens above Tyler Johnson and Jalen Darden. That's pretty interesting. And honestly, you could chalk up Jalen Darden being, wide receiver number 7, let's say, simply because of the fact that he's a rookie. Because if you look at how his training camp has been, if you look at how he's been doing as a route runner, he's been phenomenal. Now, he has had somewhat of a problem with drops. Maybe that's why he's a wide receiver 7. Who knows? But the guy is absolutely electric. He's not going to lose his roster spot at all. Tyler Johnson, I don't think he's also in danger of losing a roster spot, but I still think that it's interesting that they have him below Jaydon Mickens. A lot of people have already kind of written off Jaydon Mickens to say, like, man, he's a return guy. Jalen Darden's here now, so bye-bye Mickens. But he's been really, really good in this training camp. You could argue he's had just as good, if not maybe a slightly better training camp than a Tyler Johnson, and maybe he's even tied with Jalen Darden. Like, Mickens has done that good, and that's not even biased because he's a friend of the channel. Like, he really has done some really, really good work. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think Mickens does have a legitimate chance to make this roster. I think some people have been kind of overlooking that to a certain degree, and they have him here at potentially wide receiver 5, or 6, depending on what you want to call it. I think I'm going to call it wide receiver 5 just due to my snaking theory here, but that was kind of the first thing that jumped off of the page to me. No really interesting things here going along the offensive line. Brad Seaton, backup left tackle. That's kind of interesting that they have Wells at right tackle, considering he's played left tackle pretty much exclusively for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that was a little weird. But Nick Leverett at guard, John Molchon coming in at the 3. Really not a ton of surprises here in terms of the offensive line. The tight end position, though, gets a little interesting to me. And again, this is kind of how I read it. Rob Gronkowski at the 1. You snake down to O.J. Howard at the 2. You snake over to Cameron Brate at the 3. And then you snake up to Cody McElroy as the 4. Which that is very interesting. Above Tanner Hudson, who you would assume is probably at the 5, and then Jarrell Adams at the 6, and then you have DeQuan Hampton at 7. We talked about Tanner Hudson and how Coach Arians came out and said, look, he's got to block somebody, anybody. He has regressed as a blocker. And now you have Cody McElroy above him on the depth chart. It really makes you think, is this 4th tight end spot really as set in stone for Tanner Hudson as people once thought? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that there is a legitimate open competition here for that 4th tight end spot. They're looking for somebody to go out there and prove themselves, not just as a receiver, but especially as a blocker. You look at Gronkowski, he can block. You look at O.J. Howard, he can block. You look at Cam Brate, sure, he might be the weakest blocker out of the 3, but I think he can still do it to a certain degree. And then Tanner Hudson, maybe Cody McElroy's a better blocker. So it seems like he might have the lead right now in terms of this tight end battle. And I know you take these official depth charts with a grain of salt, but it's still something that's interesting to consider. There was some level of thought that went into this, right? Otherwise, they would have just had Tanner Hudson automatically at the 4. There was some level of thought that went into this. So that is very interesting, and I think it does open up the conversation as to, what's really going on with this fourth tight end competition. Is it Cody McElroy's in the lead right now? What is going to happen with Tanner Hudson? And then you have Jarrell Adams and Daquan Hampton in there as well, who have been making some plays. But it seems like Cody McElroy's in the lead right now. Quarterback position, really nothing too surprising here. Tom at the 1, Blaine Gabbert at the 2, Ryan Griffin at the 3, and then Kyle Trask at the 4. I know that some people may be like, oh my gosh, that's so shocking, but that's how it's been the entirety of training camp. This really isn't too surprising. You still feel bad for a guy like Ryan Griffin because, he's just in a tough situation. He might be stashed away on the practice squad, but I could also see another team signing him up to join their roster. So, again, this isn't really that surprising. We all knew Tom Brady was going to be the starter. We all knew Blaine Gabbert was going to be the backup. And with Ryan Griffin still here, that's really the only spot left for Trask until, Griffin's probably eventually let go and then Trask moves up to the 3. That's what we've always assumed it was going to be. The running back room right now, they've tabbed Ronald Jones as the starter, which was no different than last year. That was pretty darn interesting in my opinion. Leonard Fournette at the 2, Giovani Bernard at the 3, and then you have Keshawn, Vaughn, CJ Procise, and Troy Maine Pope. So again, this is kind of the one interesting thing is right now, again, maybe you give Ronald Jones a slight edge over Leonard Fournette. I still feel like this is going to drag on all the way into the regular season, and heck, probably, midway through the regular season. I still see a scenario where they're going to ride the hot hand. They're going to see what's going on. We could still see Giovani Bernard get a lot of snaps. But overall, that was an interesting note to me that they have Ronald Jones here listed as that starting running back above Leonard Fournette. And then also, shout out to Nick Leverett. I wrote that down in my notes, considering he's the backup guard behind Ali Marpet now. That is a very huge opportunity for him. And he's had a very, very solid camp. That one does make a decent amount of sense, in my opinion. Moving on to the defensive side here, Sam Renner was let go by the team. He was waived for John Molchon. I still think he's going to get an opportunity elsewhere. He honestly could end up on the practice squad. I do want to say for Earl Watford, I would probably put him somewhere back here, maybe in like the 3rd tier of offensive linemen. I don't think he would be a backup considering these guys are all pretty much, it's a good-looking backup group right now, in my opinion. So Watford would be somewhere back there. But back to the defense. Sue at the 1, Vita Vea, Will Golson. Nothing new there. Patrick O'Connor, though, above Khalil Davis and Jeremiah Ledbetter. What's going on with that? That certainly makes you wonder, because Khalil Davis has had a phenomenal camp. He really has looked fantastic. So Pat O'Connor, he's made some plays. But overall, Khalil Davis, in my opinion, has had the better camp. So maybe it's special teams play that has Pat O'Connor here at the 2nd. And also he, I don't know who had more playing time last year on the D-line. Was it O'Connor or Khalil Davis? It was maybe O'Connor slightly. So that might be why that is. But yeah, I was a little surprised that Khalil Davis wasn't at the 2 there. That one definitely may change here in the future. Steve McClendon over Jeremiah Ledbetter. That's not too surprising. Jeremiah Ledbetter's certainly in a tough battle right now with O'Connor and McClendon being 2 guys who are really established on this 53-man roster in years past. And then you have Khalil Davis, who's been absolutely great. So that's a tough situation. Nacho at the nose tackle, back up behind Vita Vea. That's not too surprising. Outside linebackers, you have Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon, Anthony Nelson. If we're led to believe, by the way, that it's still the snaking pattern, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, Quentin Bell, Cam Gill, Ladarius Hamilton, and Elijah Ponder. So, again, no surprises. Joe Tryon and Anthony Nelson, they're the backup edge rushers. That's going to be what it is. In the case of inside linebackers, I'm kind of taking it as a snaking way like this. You have Levante David at the 1, Devin White at the 2, Kevin Minter at the 3, KJ Britt at the 4, Grant Stewart at the 5, Joe Jones at the 6. That makes sense to me. In a way, I've seen Greg Auman tweet about how KJ Britt is in the lead for that 4th middle linebacker spot right now. And for Grant Stewart to possibly be above Joe Jones, I think is a good look for him. Maybe they'll carry 5 linebackers. I could see it being a real possibility. But, KJ Britt, Grant Stewart, in my opinion, they've both had pretty solid off seasons overall. They really have done some very, very solid work. I think both of them deserve to have a a spot on the 53-man roster, and overall, this linebacker room is pretty darn deep. The cornerback room, Carlton Davis at the 1, I'm assuming. Sean Murphy-Bunting at the 2, which, you know, I know a lot of people have been hyping up Jamel Dean, but they're listing Sean Murphy-Bunting at the 2. That's pretty darn interesting. Honestly, I think it's probably deserved. I mean, Sean Murphy-Bunting is a very good cornerback. I think he might even be a little bit underrated in some people's eyes. So if you're snaking it like this, Carlton Davis at the 1, go down to Sean Murphy-Bunting at 2, you move over to Jamel Dean at 3, and then move up to Ross Cockrell at 4, it's starting to make some sense. Antonio Hamilton at the 5, you have Herb Miller at the 6th, and then this just gets all kinds of confusing. So, I don't know. Maybe it's D. Delaney at 7, Nate Brooks at 8. I'm a little unsure on that. But overall, Antonio Hamilton, he's definitely one of the more favorite guys for that 5th cornerback spot right now. I think you also put Nate Brooks in that discussion. I think both those guys have had very extreme levels of camp. Like, they're either on fire during a practice or they don't do good at all during a practice. It's been very in between. I always talk about them making plays, but there's also been handfuls of times where they've been burned by some of the Bucs wide receivers. But yeah, this is still a very interesting battle. Antonio Hamilton, Herb Miller, and Nate Brooks. It seems like Hamilton has the edge here for that 5th cornerback spot. Then maybe you throw in Herb Miller and Nate Brooks, maybe even D. Delaney in there. Who knows, but regardless, that was kind of another interesting note for me there, that Antonio Hamilton, it looks like he's that cornerback 5 right now over Herb Miller and Nate Brooks, among others. And then finally, guys, really no more surprises left here. Antoine Winfield Jr., Jordan Whitehead, you have Mike Edwards, Javon Hagan back there as the backup safeties. That's kind of where everybody thought that was going to be. Raven Green, Chris Cooper, Lawrence White back there as well. And then in the special teams, there's really nothing interesting in the special teams. So, yeah, there were certainly some surprises with this depth chart. I mean, Jaydon Mickens is in there doing some work. Cody McElroy, Nick Leverett. You know, you have Jalen Darden all the way back here. Same with Kyle Trask. Ronald Jones is the starting running back. Defensive side, Pat O'Connor's getting some good looks, as is, you know, guys like KJ Britt, Grant Stewart. You have Antonio Hamilton, Nate Brooks, Herb Miller in there. And Sean Murphy-Bunting at cornerback too. There's a lot of interesting things to note. Hopefully, you know, some of the observations I made will maybe just put pins in them, right? Let's just put pins in them. Let's see how these things that I've pointed out grow and develop over time here with the remainder of training camp and the preseason. Maybe, you know, and I know people don't give a lot of stock into this, but there is some level of thought, I believe, that goes into this. So it's very, very interesting, in my opinion, to see this. So what do you guys think? Leave me your thoughts about this depth chart down in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts about some of the points that I made about some of the players in some of their positions right now? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. Now I'll see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now. And go Bucs!